The worst hotel experience. Hello, story lovers and English learners. Welcome back to Story-Driven English. Are you ready for a tale that will make your own travel nightmares seem like a walk in the park? We've all been there, haven't we? You book a hotel, dreaming of fluffy pillows and sparkling bathrooms only to find, well, something else entirely. Today, I have a story about a hotel experience so memorably awful, it became legendary. It's a journey into the heart of what could be, possibly go wrong, and trust me, everything did. If you love stories that make you laugh, cringe, and maybe even learn a few new English words along the way, you're in the right place. So grab your imaginary suitcase. But please, don't pack for this hotel. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because you won't want to miss a single moment of this disastrous adventure. Let's dive into The Grand Illusion, My Worst Hotel Stay Ever. The Grand Illusion, My Worst Hotel Stay Ever. It all began, as many adventures do, with a desperate need for a holiday. I was tired. Not just regular tired, but the kind of tired where your brain feels like it's wading through thick, sticky mud, and your enthusiasm for life has packed its bags and gone on its own vacation, probably somewhere much nicer than where I was about to end up. I needed a break, a change of scenery, a chance to recharge my batteries. My budget, however, was what you might politely call modest, or less politely, laughably small. So I did what any sensible, budget-conscious person would do. I scoured the internet for hours, clicking through endless pictures of pristine beaches and luxurious hotel rooms that were definitely out of my price range. My eyes were starting to glaze over. Click, click, scroll, click, click, too expensive. Click, click, looks like a prison cell. And then, like a shimmering mirage in a desert of disappointment, I saw it. The Palace Royale Hotel and Spa. Unforgettable. Luxury at an unbelievable price. The pictures were stunning. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings in the lobby. The rooms looked spacious with plush carpets, enormous beds draped in velvet, and balconies overlooking a sparkling city. There was even a photo of a rooftop pool that looked like it belonged in a movie star's mansion. Unbelievable price was right. It was almost too cheap. A tiny little voice in the back of my head whispered, "If it seems too good to be true, probably is." But a much louder, more desperate voice shouted, book it now, before someone else grabs this incredible bargain." Guess which voice I listened to? My confirmation email arrived, full of grand promises and flowery language about an unparalleled experience of opulence and comfort. I practically skipped around my apartment for a week, telling everyone about the amazing deal I'd found. I imagined myself lounging by that rooftop pool, sipping a cool drink, feeling like royalty. Oh, the sweet, sweet naivety. The day of my trip arrived. My flight was uneventful, which, in hindsight, was the last uneventful thing that would happen for a while. I landed, collected my suitcase, which, by the way, felt far too optimistic for the journey ahead, and headed for the taxi rank. I gave the driver the name of the hotel. "The Palace Royale Hotel and Spa, please." He frowned, scratching his head. "The Palace, what now?" "The Palace Royale Hotel and Spa," I repeated, a little louder, a little slower. My confidence wavering just a tiny bit. He shrugged. "Never heard of it, mate, but I'll put it in the GPS." This was the first red flag. A tiny little warning bell. A taxi driver in a major city not knowing a hotel with such a grand name? Strange. But I brushed it off. Maybe it was new. Maybe it was an exclusive hidden gem. Spoiler, it was hidden, all right, but not in a good way. The taxi ride itself was an experience. We drove away from the shiny modern part of the city, then through a slightly less shiny part, then through a part that looked like it hadn't seen a lick of paint since the 1970s. The streets grew narrower, the buildings more dilapidated. "Are you sure this is the right way?" I asked, trying to keep the nervousness out of my voice. "GPS says so," he grunted, swerving to avoid a stray cat that looked as surprised to be there as I was. Finally, after what felt like an eternity navigating a labyrinth of questionable alleyways, the taxi pulled up in front of a building. I peered out the window. This couldn't be it. The Palace Royale Hotel and Spa sign was there. Yes, but some of the letters were missing, so it actually read, "Tie pa ace Roy Lahat pa." One of the remaining letters hung at a very sad angle, as if it had given up on life. The building itself looked less palace and more slightly upgraded shed. The paint was peeling. There was a suspicious-looking stain running down one wall, and the manicured garden mentioned in the brochure consisted of a few brave weeds poking through cracked concrete. I paid the driver, who looked at me with an expression that was a mixture of pity and confusion, and then quickly sped away, as if escaping a haunted house. I stood on the pavement, my suitcase beside me, feeling a growing sense of dread. This was not the luxurious haven I'd envisioned, not even close. Taking a deep breath, I told myself, don't judge a book by its cover. Maybe the inside is beautiful. Oh, the optimism of a desperate traveler. I pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked like something out of a horror movie, and stepped into the lobby. The lobby. Where do I even begin? The crystal chandelier from the photos was there, sort of. It was much smaller, dustier, and several of the crystals were missing, leaving little gaps like missing teeth. The plush carpet was thin, worn, and patterned, with an array of mysterious stains that I really didn't want to think about too closely. The air conditioning unit in the corner was making a noise like a dying walrus. Behind a rickety wooden counter which served as the reception desk sat a man. He was ancient, with spectacles perched precariously on the end of his nose, and he was engrossed in a crossword puzzle. He didn't look up when I entered. He didn't even seem to notice I was there. "Ahem," I said, trying to sound polite. He continued to chew on the end of his pencil, muttering, "A 7-letter word for disappointment." "Excuse me," I tried again, a little louder. He finally looked up, blinking at me owlishly. "Yes," he croaked as if speaking was a tremendous effort. "I have a reservation," I said, trying to inject some cheerfulness I definitely didn't feel. "The name is Alex Smith." He sighed, a long, weary sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world, or at least the weight of this crumbling hotel. He slowly, very slowly, turned to an ancient computer that looked like it belonged in a museum. He typed with one finger, peck, 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 occasionally squinting at the screen. Took him about 5 minutes to type my name. I could have knitted a scarf in the time it took him to find my booking. "Ah, yes," he finally said without a trace of enthusiasm. "Smith, room 3B, top floor, best view." He winked, and it wasn't a charming wink. It was a slightly unnerving, I know something you don't know kind of wink. He handed me a key. Not a key card, mind you. An actual old-fashioned metal key attached to a large, strangely shaped piece of plastic that probably weighed more than my phone. "Elevator is out of order," he announced, gesturing vaguely with his thumb towards a dark corner. "Been out of order since, well, for a while." Of course it was. "Top floor," he'd said. I glanced at my suitcase. It suddenly felt twice as heavy. "So, stairs then?" I asked. "Stairs it is," he confirmed, already turning back to his crossword puzzle. Good for the heart. The staircase was narrow, dimly lit, and the carpet on the stairs, if you could call it carpet, was even more stained and worn than the lobbies. Each step creaked ominously under my weight. It was like climbing the Tower of Terror, but without any of the fun. By the time I reached the third floor, I was out of breath and regretting every life choice that had led me to this moment. "Room 3B. I stood before the door, my heart pounding with a mixture of exertion and trepidation. The number 3 was intact, but the B was hanging upside down, secured by a single rusty tack. I took another deep breath. "Okay, Alex," I muttered to myself. Maybe this is where the magic happens. Maybe the room itself is the hidden gem. I put the key in the lock. It was stiff. I wiggled it, I jiggled it, I pushed, I pulled. Finally, with a reluctant groan from the lock, the door creaked open. The first thing that hit me was the smell. It was a unique aroma, a complex blend of dampness, dust, old socks, and something vaguely chemical that I couldn't quite identify, and frankly didn't want to. I flicked the light switch. A single dim bulb flickered to life, casting a depressing yellow glow over the room. Spacious, the website had promised. The room was so small I could almost touch all 4 walls at once if I stretched. If a sardine had a baby with a broom closet, this would be it. My suitcase, when I brought it in, took up most of the available floor space. Enormous bed draped in velvet. The description had cooed. The bed was there, yes. It was a narrow, sad-looking thing, pushed against one wall. The velvet was a faded, pilled bedspread that looked like it had seen better decades. I cautiously poked the mattress. It felt lumpy, like a bag full of coconuts. I had a sinking feeling that a good night's sleep was not going to be on the agenda. Balcony overlooking a sparkling city, the website had boasted. There was a window at least. I wrestled with the stiff latch and finally managed to heave it open. I leaned out, eager for my sparkling city view. What I got was a breathtaking panorama of a brick wall, a very close brick wall. So close, in fact, I could have reached out and touched it. And on that brick wall, someone had creatively spray-painted a very unflattering picture of what looked like a surprised cat. So, not quite the sparkling city I'd anticipated, unless surprised. Cats were now a major tourist attraction. I turned my attention to the ensuite bathroom. The door handle was loose and came off in my hand when I tried to open it. After a bit of fumbling, I managed to get it open. The bathroom was tiny, even smaller than the main room, if that was possible. The sink had a persistent drip, drip, drip that sounded like a tiny, relentless drummer. The showerhead was green with what I hoped was limescale, and not some exotic form of alien mold. I tentatively turned on the hot water tap. Cold water came out. I waited. Still cold. I let it run for 5 minutes. Lukewarm at best. The kind of lukewarm that makes you shiver even on a warm day. And the toilet. Oh, the toilet. It had a very disconcerting wobble. When I gently pressed the flush handle, it made a sound like a hippo clearing its throat, followed by a gurgle, and then a slow, reluctant swirl. I decided to use the bathroom facilities as sparingly as possible. Back in the bedroom, I noticed other delightful features. The television, a small, ancient box perched on a rickety stand, had no remote control. When I tried the buttons on the TV itself, it just hissed static at me. The phone, presumably to call reception, had a frayed cord and no dial tone. It was purely decorative, a monument to communication failures. There was a wardrobe, but when I opened it, a cloud of dust motes danced in the dim light, and the smell of mothballs was overwhelming. It also seemed to be home to a rather large, hairy spider, who looked at me as if I was intruding on his private residence. I quickly closed the door. He could keep it. My clothes would be happier staying in my suitcase. I sat on the edge of the lumpy bed, feeling utterly defeated. This wasn't just bad. This was comically, spectacularly bad. It was like I'd accidentally booked a room in a sitcom about the world's worst hotel. I actually started to laugh. It was either laugh or cry, and laughing seemed like the more productive option. My stomach rumbled. The hotel brochure had mentioned a charming dining room offering exquisite local cuisine. Given the state of everything else, my hopes for exquisite local cuisine were rapidly plummeting. But I was hungry, so I decided to brave it. The charming dining room was a small, gloomy space off the lobby, with mismatched tables and chairs. There were plastic flowers on each table, gathering dust. Only one other table was occupied by a very old lady, who was staring intently into a bowl of soup, as if trying to divine the future from it. A waiter, who looked suspiciously like the receptionist's younger, equally unenthusiastic brother, shuffled over. He handed me a menu that was sticky to the touch. The options were limited and uninspiring. Mystery meat stew, questionable fish surprise, and vegetable medley may contain vegetables. I decided to play it safe and ordered a cheese sandwich. How badly could anyone mess up a cheese sandwich? Famous last words. What arrived was 2 slices of dry, slightly stale bread, with a single pale, sweaty-looking slice of processed cheese in the middle. It was accompanied by 3 very sad-looking potato chips. Exquisite. It was not. I ate it slowly, trying to pretend it was the gourmet meal I'd been dreaming of. The old lady at the other table was still staring at her soup. Maybe it was more interesting than my sandwich. After dinner, I thought I'd check out the rooftop pool, the one that looked so glamorous in the photos. I asked the waiter-receptionist's brother for directions. He just pointed upwards and mumbled, "Roof, stairs, good luck." More stairs. These were even narrower and steeper, leading to a heavy door that clearly hadn't been opened in a long time. I pushed it open with considerable effort and stepped out onto, well, it was a roof. There was no sparkling pool. There was no lounge furniture. There was a collection of old buckets, a discarded tire, and a pigeon coop. The panoramic city view was mostly obscured by a large water tank. I think the photographer who took the pictures for the website must have been a wizard, or perhaps they just used photos from a completely different hotel. That seemed more likely. Defeated, I trudged back down to my shoebox of a room. The brick wall outside my window seemed to mock me. The spider in the wardrobe was probably laughing. I decided to try and make the best of it. I unpacked a few essentials, trying to avoid disturbing the delicate ecosystem of dust bunnies under the bed. I found a book I'd brought and tried to read, but the dim lighting made it difficult. The dripping tap in the bathroom provided a constant, irritating soundtrack. As night fell, the true symphony of the Palace Royale Hotel and Spa began. From the room next door, I could hear what sounded like a very loud, very off-key argument in a language I didn't recognize. From the floor above, there was a rhythmic thumping, like someone was practicing basketball with a bowling ball, and from somewhere down the hall, someone started playing the bagpipes, badly. Very, very badly. It was like a concert put on by a group of disgruntled ghosts. Sleep was elusive. The lumpy mattress seemed to actively fight against me every spring, and Bump making its presence known. The pillow was as flat as a pancake and smelled faintly of despair. I tossed and turned, trying to find a comfortable position, but it was like trying to sleep on a pile of oddly shaped rocks. The noises from outside and inside the hotel continued unabated. The bagpipes finally stopped around 3 a.m., only to be replaced by what sounded like a catfight on the roof. I must have drifted off at some point, because I was jolted awake by a strange scratching sound. My eyes snapped open. It was dark. The scratching came again, closer this time. It sounded like it was coming from inside the room. My heart hammered in my chest. I fumbled for my phone, turned on the flashlight, and scanned the room. There, near my suitcase, was a mouse. A rather bold, surprisingly large mouse. It was nibbling on the corner of my bag. It looked up at me, its whiskers twitching. Completely unafraid. We stared at each other for a moment, me frozen in horror, the mouse looking mildly inconvenienced by the sudden light. Then it calmly scurried under the bed. That was it. That was my breaking point. Mice in my room, sharing my already tiny, uncomfortable space. No, absolutely not. I didn't sleep another wink. I sat bolt upright in bed, flashlight in hand, guarding my suitcase like it contained the crown jewels. I watched the gray light of dawn creep through the gap in the curtains, illuminating the brick wall outside. It was the most welcome sunrise I had ever seen. As soon as it was a semi-reasonable hour, I packed my belongings with lightning speed. I didn't even bother trying to use the shower. I just wanted out. Out of this room. Out of this hotel. Out of this nightmare. I clattered down the creaky stairs, my suitcase bumping behind me. The ancient receptionist was back at his post, still working on what looked like the same crossword puzzle. He looked up as I approached the desk. A glimmer of something. Was it surprise? In his eyes. "Checking out?" he asked, his voice still a gravelly croak. "Yes," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Immediately." He didn't ask if I'd enjoyed my stay. I think he knew the answer. He slowly processed my checkout, which involved more one-fingered typing and a lot of sighing. Finally, I handed back the heavy, old-fashioned key. "Thank you," I said. though I wasn't entirely sure what I was thanking him for. For the experience, perhaps. For the story I would now be able to tell. He just nodded, and before I was even out the door, he had turned back to his crossword. "Ah, calamity," I heard him mutter. "That's a good one." I burst out of Palace Royale Hotel Spa and onto the street, gulping in the fresh air like drowning man. Even the slightly grimy street looked beautiful after my night in that room. I flagged down the first taxi I saw, practically diving into the back seat. "Take me to a different hotel," I said. "Any different hotel. A clean one. Preferably one without its own resident wildlife or a bagpipe orchestra." The taxi driver chuckled. "Bad experience, huh?" "You have no idea," I said, and as we drove away, leaving the Palace Royale, or what was left of it, behind me, I started to laugh again. It was, without a doubt, the worst hotel experience of my life, but it was also, in its own strange, disastrous way, completely unforgettable. And it certainly taught me one very valuable lesson. If a hotel deal looks too good to be true, it probably involves a lumpy mattress, a brick wall view, and possibly a roommate with whiskers. Always read the reviews, folks. Always. Key vocabulary. Repeated throughout. Hotel. A place providing accommodation, meals, and other services for travelers and tourists. Reservation. An arrangement to have something, like a room, held for your use at a later time. Lobby. The main entrance area or hall of a hotel reception desk. The counter in a hotel where guests check in and out. Room. A private space in a hotel for sleeping. Suitcase. A portable rectangular traveling bag for carrying. Clothes. Bed. A piece of furniture used for sleeping. Bathroom. A room containing a toilet and a sink, and typically a bathtub or shower. Window. An opening in the wall of a building to admit light and air. View. What can be seen from a particular place, especially a scenic one. Elevator. Lift in British English. A platform or compartment housed in a shaft for raising and lowering people or things to different floors. Stairs. A set of steps leading from one floor of a building to another. Key. A small piece of shaped metal with incisions cut to fit the wards of a particular lock. Price. The amount of money expected, required, or given in payment for something. Book verb. To reserve accommodation, a ticket, etc. in advance. Check in. To arrive and register at a hotel. Check out. To settle one's hotel bill and leave. Clean. Free from dirt, marks, or stains. Dirty. Covered or marked with an unclean substance. Comfortable. Providing physical ease and relaxation. Uncomfortable. Causing or feeling slight pain or physical discomfort. Quiet. Making little or no noise. Noisy. Making a lot of noise. Staff. The people employed by a particular organization, like a hotel. Manager. A person responsible for controlling or administering an organization or group of staff. Luxury. Luxurious. A state of great comfort and extravagance. Budget. An estimate of income and expenditure for a set period of time. ADJ. Inexpensive. Disappointed. Disappointment. Sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. Wow. Can you believe that place? Palace Royale Hotel Spa. Definitely one for the Travel Horror Hall of Fame. I hope Alex eventually found a decent hotel with actual hot water and no surprise roommates. What about you? Have you ever had a hilariously terrible hotel experience? I'd love to hear your stories. Share them in the comments below. Let's compare notes on our travel misadventures. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep improving your English with more engaging tales, please give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to share this video with your friends who are learning English, or just love a good story. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Story Driven English and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure in language learning. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Until next time, happy reading, happy learning, and may all your hotel stays be 5-star or at least mouse-free. Bye for now.